I bent down the linoleum cool against my knees as I scrubbed at a faint stain beneath the kitchen sink. My wrists ached, my back screamed, and behind me, Rena's voice cut through the silence like vinegar on a wound. "You missed a spot. Under the pipe." I didn't turn around, just nodded. She didn't say thank you. She never did. She hovered nearby in heels that clacked on the tile. Her hair was perfect, makeup, flawless phone pressed to her ear. "Yes, everything's ready. Just finishing up. The kitchen's almost decent now," she said, casting a pointed glance in my direction. I stayed quiet. Tonight was the dinner. Her words, not mine. Important people, she kept saying all week. Clients, investors, her father's colleagues, people who mattered. I was not one of them. When she was done with her call, she leaned against the counter and eyed me. "You'll finish up here, then maybe help with the patio lights. Brandon's useless with ladders." She paused, then added, like an afterthought, "You're a lifesaver." I didn't respond. I'd learned not to in this house. Once I had a title. Once I was Chef Marla Brennan, known across 3 counties for my catering. I built that business from my own hands, woke before dawn, baked through holidays, poured everything into feeding people with pride. Now I was someone helping out. Rena said that last Thanksgiving when her friends asked if I was her mother. "Oh no, she just helps out with food and things." I scrubbed harder. At 61, I lived in their guest house. Technically between places, though it had been 11 months. I paid no rent. That was the deal. "Stay as long as you want," Brandon said when I sold my condo. But lately, his tone changed. Like hospitality had an expiration date I'd missed. From the living room, I heard Rena's laugh. A new laugh, higher pitched, the kind meant for people with last names that opened doors. I rinsed the rag and sat back on my heels. Brandon hadn't come down yet. He never did when she gave orders. But he used to. I stood slowly, gripping the counter for balance. My knees cracked as I straightened. That familiar heat behind my eyes rose again. Not from exhaustion, from invisibility. It was almost time for guests. After Richard died, I didn't think much about the house. It felt too big without his voice in it. Too quiet. Too cold. So when Brandon suggested I sell and stay with them just for a while, I said yes. I didn't ask how long. I didn't think I'd need to. They showed me the guest suite like it was a gift. It used to be the home office, still smelled faintly of printer ink and dry erase markers. A single window, 1 closet. I brought 3 boxes and a suitcase. The rest went to charity. Rena made a point of saying she'd cleared some space for me. A drawer in the bathroom, half a shelf in the linen closet. No place for shoes by the door. I didn't mind at first. I told myself I was lucky. It was family. Just a transition. But days turned into weeks, and the weeks folded into months. My name disappeared from the mail, from the dinner table, from conversations entirely. Most nights I ate standing up by the stove. If there were leftovers, I took them. If not, I made toast. Rena's voice carried from the dining room. She'd talk about mergers, real estate, the Peloton instructor she adored. I only ever heard Brandon say, "Mum," or "Yep." I washed their wine glasses after they left them in the sink, folded their laundry when it sat in the basket too long. Rena didn't ask. She just noticed and stopped doing it herself. In the mornings, I waited until the kitchen cleared before making coffee. Rena's machine was some sleek European thing that ground beans fresh for her clients. I wasn't allowed to touch it. She said it was too complicated. So I used the instant packets, poured boiling water from the kettle, stirred with a spoon that wobbled slightly from heat damage. I drank it from a chipped mug with no handle. It didn't taste like coffee. It tasted like pretending. Brandon once asked if I needed anything. I said no, because how do you say I need someone to look at me and remember who I was? That night, I sat on my bed, The door closed, the world muffled. And I realized I hadn't heard anyone say my name all day. Rena hosted another one of her networking nights last Saturday. That's what she calls them, though. It always looks the same: wine glasses, business cards, linen napkins folded in ways no one notices, and me in the kitchen, hands deep in lemon vinaigrette. She said the theme this time was refined, casual. I didn't ask what that meant. I just ironed the cloth napkins and sliced the baguette diagonally, because last time I made the mistake of cutting them straight and heard about it for days. By 7, the doorbell was ringing non-stop. Rena floated through the foyer like she was gliding on air, all teeth and perfume. Brandon stood off to the side, nursing a drink, wearing the exact same half-smile he always wore when she was on. I brought out the crostini platter, wiped my hands on the towel tucked into my waistband, and stepped back into the kitchen. That was my routine. Out, invisible. Someone laughed loudly in the other room. A woman's voice, sharp nasal. "Oh, are you the caterer?" she asked when she caught sight of me carrying a fresh tray of prosciutto skewers. Before I could answer, Rena's voice cut in. "She's sort of our live-in support." Laughter. Just enough to sting. No one corrected her. Not even Brandon. I placed the tray down and walked back to the sink. My hands moved on autopilot, rinsing dishes before they dried sticky. But my thoughts weren't quiet anymore. Live-in support. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like that. Last month it was, "Oh, she just helps out kind of like family staff." The month before, "She's more comfortable behind the scenes." The truth, I wasn't on the guest list. Never had been. I was the prep. The cleanup. The blurred figure in the background of their curated lives. The one who knew where the candle lighters were, how to fix the ice maker when it jammed, how to get red wine out of linen. At 9, I slipped out before dessert. No one noticed. At midnight, I cleaned the rest plates, still crusted wine glasses, smeared with lipstick. At 2, I folded the last dish towel and sat on the edge of my bed. The next morning, Rena was already talking about the next party. Rena burst through the front door like a storm in heels. Her voice carried all the way into the kitchen before she even set down her purse. "We landed her," she said, breathless, triumphant. "Victoria Hale. The Victoria Hale. She's coming Saturday." I was wiping down the counter already, thinking about menus and table settings. But that name, it hit something deep. I turned slowly, cloth still in hand. "Victoria Hale," I asked. "As in Hale Resorts?" Rena didn't notice the shift in my voice. She was too busy spinning. "She's flying in for the weekend. Brandon's firm is pitching a sustainability package to her executive board, and she's agreed to stop by for the Saturday mixer. Just an hour, but still." She beamed like it was royalty. I leaned on the counter, the room tilting slightly. "I used to cater her private dinners," I said softly, "back when she lived on Marigold Lane before the merger with Pacific Ocean Holdings. Her daughter's allergic to shellfish. Her son hated anything green unless it was dipped in ranch." Rena blinked at me, lips parting for a beat. "You mean that was you?" I nodded slowly. "She called me Miracle Marla once. I got blood out of a white linen chair the night of her husband's retirement." For a moment, the room went quiet. Then Rena laughed. Loud, dismissive. "Well, maybe you knew a Victoria Hale, but this one only mingles with serious professionals now. Not home cooks." She said it like a joke, but her eyes told me it wasn't. I turned back to the counter, my hand tightening around the cloth. My heart thudded, not from hurt, but from something sharper. Memory, precision, pride. I remembered the exact layout of Victoria's wine cellar. The way she liked her lamb seasoned. The time she pulled me aside just to say, "You're the reason tonight worked." But I stayed silent. Let Rena plan her mixer. Let her decorate with eucalyptus leaves and low candles. Let her believe Victoria Hale wouldn't remember me. Saturday was coming, so was the truth. And this time I wouldn't be hiding in the kitchen. Certainly. Here's the continuation of the story with that night after the dishwasher hummed its final cycle and the house fell into silence. I opened the drawer where I kept my socks and lifted the false bottom. Beneath it, wrapped in a linen towel, was the leather folio. I hadn't touched it in over a year. I carried it to the bed and laid it flat. My fingers hesitated on the zipper. Then I opened it. Inside my old world. Press clippings from Midwest Culinary Review back when I was Chef Marla Brennan, pioneer of elegant, accessible catering. A photo of me in a crisp white jacket, shaking hands with Senator Dwyer after a gala in 2009. Menu cards embossed with gold foil from 5-star events I curated. Start to finish weddings, fundraisers, even the annual mayor's dinner. Each one had my signature in the corner. Not printed, signed. There was one article headlined, "From Scratch: How a Single Mother Built a Culinary Empire with Grit and Gnocchi." I remember laughing at the title back then. But the piece was kind. Accurate. It mentioned my 70-person staff. The summer I catered 5 weddings in 3 weekends. The time I fed 600 guests without a single plate returned. Near the back, tucked in a plastic sleeve, was the bill of sale. The final paperwork from when I sold Brennan Catering and Events to a national firm 2 years ago. 7 figures. Confidential, of course. I didn't tell Brandon. Didn't see the point. I just wanted peace. I stared at the portfolio for a long time. For years, I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need to prove anything. My work spoke for itself. My legacy was in the memories I helped create, not in the applause. But lately, silence had started to feel like surrender. And I wasn't ready to vanish yet. I tucked the folder into my tote bag and zipped it shut. Saturday was coming. If Rena was going to host Victoria Hale in my presence, then it was time she understood who exactly was setting the table. Rena was in rare form. She clipped around the kitchen in stilettos too high for comfort, barking orders at anyone who moved. Marla polished the wine glasses, no smudges, not a single one. And don't touch the truffle oil. It's for professionals. I nodded. No protest. Just like always. She barely looked at me as she waved toward the pantry. "We're hosting someone powerful. Try not to be underfoot." I dried my hands and stepped back. Her voice followed me like a mosquito. "I'm serious, Marla. No stories tonight. Just let the real team handle things." The word team settled hard. I'd once led a 70-person staff. Now I was warned not to speak. I slipped quietly into the guest suite and closed the door behind me. The room smelled faintly of lemon oil and lavender sachets. Rena's idea of luxury. I pulled the small bag from the closet and packed it deliberately. Nothing dramatic, just the basics. Clean clothes, a soft blouse, the black flats I used to wear for plated service. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up. Heart steady. Reservation confirmed, 7 p.m. Hale Resorts Culinary Council. Welcome dinner. Private dining suite. You will be introduced by name. Victoria had texted earlier. Can't wait to hear what you've been working on. I'll make sure they know exactly who you are. I stared at that message longer than I needed to. Brandon knocked once outside my door but didn't open it. "Hey, Raina says she needs the glass tiered trays." I opened the door and handed them over. He didn't meet my eyes. "Thanks, Mom," he said, already turning. It was the first time he'd said Mom all week. I zipped the bag and tucked my portfolio inside. My name, my work, my proof. Dinner at the house would begin at 6. But I'd be gone before that. Gone to a table that had a seat reserved for me by name, not by obligation. I stepped out through the side door quietly, like always. No one called after me. I had just zipped up my coat in the lobby of the downtown hotel when my phone started to ring. Rena's name flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Then Brandon called. I answered that one. Mom, he said, breath tight. Rena says you left. That you're not here for tonight. I could hear the tension in his voice, the chaos behind it. Voices, clinking glass, the faint hum of panic. I left the house an hour ago, I said calmly. Everything is set. The platters are arranged, the linens are ironed. I even restocked the wine fridge. But, can't you just help one more time? He asked, his voice dropping to that same pleading tone he used as a boy when he lost something he didn't take care of. I paused, then said it as clearly as I could. Brandon, I did help. For 2 years, I cleaned your house, cooked your meals, made your wife's life easier in ways she never acknowledged. You just weren't looking. There was silence on the line. I didn't fill it. Before he could respond, I added, check the kitchen table. I left you a note. Then I ended the call. At the house, I knew what they'd find. A list of 3 emergency catering contacts I trusted, all of whom owed me a favor. Beside it, a small folded card with my name printed in gold. Marla Brennan, Culinary Director, Rhett. Not someone helping out. Not live-in support. Just who I was and still am. The front desk attendant at the hotel smiled and handed me a key card. Private suite, 3rd floor. Miss Hale asked us to escort you personally. Thank you, I said, adjusting the strap of my bag. Upstairs, the elevator opened into a warm, softly lit room. A round table was set for 8. White linen, polished glassware. Real silver. And at the center of the table next to Victoria's nameplate was mine. Not taped on. Engraved. The seat was mine before I ever asked. I set my bag down. Took my place. And for once, no one asked me to vanish. By the time I was raising my glass to toast with Victoria and the others downtown, Rena was calling every restaurant in a 10-mile radius. The catering contacts I left didn't pick up. Not for her. It was a Saturday night. Most kitchens were slammed or closed. She tried to get Brandon to cook the backup pasta she bragged about last week. He burned it. The smoke alarm went off before the first guest arrived. I didn't need to be there to know the rhythm. I could feel it. By 7:30, the front door opened to polished shoes and manicured hands shaking off the evening chill. Rena greeted them in her tailored jumpsuit voice, 2 high arms too wide. Behind her, the dining room sat perfectly set but empty. No platters, no hors d'oeuvres, no scent of lemon zest or garlic or truffle, anything. Just air. Victoria Hale walked in last. Not early, not late. Right on time. She looked around once. Her eyes took in the table, the sideboard, the empty wine glasses. She didn't say a word. Rena launched into charm mode. We decided to keep it casual, she said too brightly. Let the energy stay fresh and spontaneous. We're ordering in very urban chic. Brandon hovered behind her, holding a menu like it was a lifeline. Someone laughed. Uncomfortably. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. 3 boxes. Thin crust. Double pepperoni. Rena took them to the kitchen, cursing under her breath. She plated the slices on crystal dessert plates. The grease soaked through by the second bite. Victoria sat across from her, barely touched her food, smiled when spoken to, said little. When Rena launched into her pitch branding PR services, digital footprint optimization, Victoria nodded once. That's very ambitious, she said. Her eyes didn't shine. Her voice didn't lift. By 9, the guests were making excuses. Early mornings, babysitters, travel fatigue. Victoria stood last. She thanked Rena for the experience. Then she turned toward the hallway. She paused at the edge of the kitchen where the counter still held an unopened bottle of wine and a plate of untouched lemon cookies. Shame, she murmured. Would have gone well with coffee. The next evening, I stood beside Victoria Hale under the soft lights of the Hale Resort's executive suite. The walls were glass, the skyline behind us, glowing amber and silver. There was laughter linen, the kind of room that made you feel like something was always beginning. Victoria raised her glass and smiled toward the small crowd gathering for introductions. This, she said, placing a hand gently on my shoulder, is Marla Brennan, a legend in luxury catering. If you've ever eaten something memorable at a charity gala in this city, odds are she's the reason. A few heads turned. I didn't speak. I just nodded, smiled. Let them wonder how they'd never heard the name. One of the younger staffers from Victoria's team stepped closer, eyes wide. Wait. Marla Brennan, like Brennan Catering. My parents talk about your Thanksgiving setup every year. I laughed softly. That was a long time ago. They said the maple glaze on your turkey could make grown men cry. It probably still could, Victoria added, and everyone chuckled. Later, as the crowd thinned, Victoria pulled out her phone. Want to see something? She asked. She turned the screen toward me. A photo from the night before. The dining room at Brandon and Rena's house. The crystal plates. The pizza. And Rena posed smiling too wide for a casual dinner, holding a wine glass like it was a trophy. She told me her mother-in-law was a failed cook, Victoria said. Said you just helped around the house. Wasn't sure what to do with yourself after retirement. I sipped my coffee. No words. Just the slow comfort of heat between my palms. Victoria shook her head. That woman served me delivery pizza on a dessert plate and pitched herself like she invented the concept of charm. Meanwhile, you were plating duck confit and lavender bread pudding before she ever picked up a spatula. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The truth had finally walked into the room without noise, without apology. Victoria lifted her glass again. You ready to talk shop? I raised my cup in return. Let's begin. 3 weeks later, a package arrived at my door, flat, wrapped in stiff brown paper. My name written in confident black ink. I set it on the kitchen table and opened it slowly, careful not to tear the corners. Inside was a framed magazine cover. Culinary Monthly. In bold letters, the return of Marla Brennan, quiet giant of coastal catering. My photo sat below the headline, taken at the Hale Resorts event, mid-laugh, holding a plate of pistachio meringues. The caption called me a seasoned architect of warmth and flavor, a woman who lets her work speak louder than her resume ever needed to. I hung it on the wall beside the pantry just above the spice rack. Not for display. Not for guests. For me. For the woman who once forgot she had a name outside of help. 2 days later, Brandon knocked. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe he'd just stopped standing as tall. Rena's not handling the fallout well, he said, sitting stiffly at the table. She lost 3 clients this week. Victoria never replied to her follow-ups. I poured coffee into 2 cups, set his down gently, sat across from him. I'm not angry, I said, but I'm no longer invisible, not for her convenience. He nodded slowly, eyes drifting to the magazine cover on the wall. He stared at it for a long time. She didn't know, he said. She didn't ask. We sat in silence for a while. The kind that didn't ache, just hovered like breath between chords. Brandon ran his hand through his hair. I should have, I don't know, done more. You still can, I said. But not for me. For yourself. For your son. Teach him how to see people clearly. He nodded again. Before he left, he paused at the door. You look different. I smiled. Maybe I just stopped shrinking. After he left, I poured myself another cup of coffee. The late afternoon sun poured through the window, catching on the edge of the frame. My name glinted in gold ink. Not borrowed, not hidden. Just mine.